February, central Ukraine, 15,000 years ago. The temperature outside is -8 degrees. 25 people are living inside a house built from the bones of 95 mammoths. Not a cave, a house. Someone built this on purpose, out of the largest animals on the planet, because the landscape gave them nothing else to work with and it kept them alive. You adjusted your thermostat this morning without looking at it. Somewhere between 68 and 72 degrees, the range your body decided was comfortable, and then you forgot about temperature completely. Strip away the thermostat. Strip away the insulation, the gas line, the grocery store. Put yourself outside in January, wearing only what you could make with your hands. That is where your ancestors lived, not as an emergency, as a normal Tuesday, for 300,000 winters in a row. Your core temperature sits at 37 C. Drop it to 35, and you start shivering uncontrollably. Drop it to 33, and your thinking gets confused, your coordination fails. Drop it to 30, and you lose consciousness. Below 28, your heart stops. That's the entire window, less than 10 degrees your ancestors were working with every single winter night for hundreds of thousands of years. And yet the human body isn't helpless in the cold. It's not built for it the way a polar bear is built for it. But it's not defenseless. Either it has old mechanisms that switch on the moment temperature drops. When temperature drops, vasoconstriction happens first. Blood vessels near your skin tighten, pulling warm blood towards your core and sacrificing your extremities to protect your vital organs. Your fingers go cold. Your toes go cold. Your heart stays warm. That's not discomfort, that's triage. Your body making a calculated decision about which parts of you are worth saving. Then shivering kicks in, burning stored energy at roughly 5 times your resting rate, which means a shivering human is burning through fat fast, and a human who runs out of fat runs out of shivering. That arithmetic, the cold demanding calories while cutting off the supply of them, was the fundamental trap of every winter your ancestors ever faced. But the body does something else too. Something researchers didn't fully understand until recently. In 2014, physiologist Wouter van Marken-Lichtenbelt of Maastricht University found that repeated cold exposure activates brown adipose tissue, a specialized fat that generates heat directly instead of just storing energy. Deliberate cold exposure increases both how much active brown fat you have and how efficiently it produces heat. Your ancestors were cold every winter for decades. Their bodies weren't fighting the cold from scratch each season, they were adapting to it in real time. You haven't been genuinely cold in months, maybe years. The machinery is still inside you. It's just switched off. Adaptation adjusts the margin, though it doesn't eliminate it. No amount of brown fat keeps a human alive at -30 without shelter, clothing, and fire. Fire is the oldest winter technology your ancestors had, not a tool. A controlled chemical reaction they learned to start, maintain, and carry with them. The oldest confirmed evidence of controlled fire use comes from Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, where archaeologist Francesco Berna of Simon Fraser University found burned bone and ash dating back roughly 1 million years deliberate fire, made deep inside a cave where wildfire couldn't naturally reach. But making fire and surviving a real winter aren't the same test. South Africa's winters are mild. The real test came when early humans pushed north into England, Germany, northern China, where temperatures routinely dropped below zero. At Beech's Pit in Suffolk, archaeologist John Gowlett of the University of Liverpool found structured hearths dating to roughly 400,000 years ago, not scattered ash, but hearths deliberately built and reused over time. A fire you stumble across is warmth. A fire you build and maintain is strategy. That's the line between surviving winter and engineering a solution to it. Fire has a limit, though step more than a couple of meters from the flame in any real wind, and the warmth is gone. Your ancestors needed something that traveled with them: clothing. And clothing leaves almost no archaeological trace. Leather rots. Fur disappears, so for decades, researchers could only guess when humans started wearing it. Then genetics gave us an answer nothing else could. In 2011, biologist Melissa Toops of the University of Florida used an unlikely proxy, the human body louse, which unlike head lice can only survive in the seams of clothing. By tracing when body lice genetically diverged from head lice, her team estimated clothing became a regular part of human life roughly 170,000 years ago, well before modern humans left Africa, and well before the coldest environments they'd eventually colonize. A fitted garment that traps warm air against your skin isn't decoration. It's the difference between alive and dead in a European winter. Clothing and fire only solve the problem while you're awake and moving, though. The most dangerous hours are the ones you spend still sleeping, metabolism slowed, with the cold given 8 uninterrupted hours to undo everything fire and fur built up. That's what shelter solved. Not always caves are valuable, but rare and unevenly distributed. So people built. At Mezhirich in Ukraine, archaeologists in 1965 found the remains of 4 structures built entirely from mammoth bone, lower jaw bones stacked into interlocking arches, long limb bones used as roof supports, skulls anchoring the walls at regular intervals. Dated to roughly 15,000 years ago, one of these structures alone used the remains of at least 95 individual mammoths. And the bones weren't used incidentally. Jaw bones were chosen for their curvature, femurs for their load-bearing strength, arranged with an understanding of weight and stress that required real planning and knowledge passed down across generations. Archaeologist Olga Soffer of the University of Illinois concluded these structures were almost certainly covered in mammoth hide and heated from inside, maintaining survivable temperatures even when it was -20 outside. Not caves. Houses, built from the largest animals on the planet by people who extracted shelter from a landscape that didn't offer it freely. Picture that winter camp again. It's February, -8 outside, roughly 8 hours of usable daylight and 16 hours of dark. 25 to 30 people are living in 2 mammoth bone structures, each with a central hearth burning dung and bone because wood is scarce on the open steppe. Near the fire, it's 5 or 6 degrees cold by your standards, survivable by theirs. Outside, wind moving at 20 kilometers an hour drops the effective temperature to nearly -30. Nobody goes out unless they have to. So what fills 14 hours of darkness? This is the part of Ice Age survival that almost never gets discussed because it leaves no archaeological record. The social and cognitive life of a winter camp, what people did with the hours when hunting was impossible, foraging was impossible, and the only option was to stay inside and wait. In 2014, anthropologist Polly Weissner of the University of Utah published research in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences comparing daytime and nighttime conversation among the Jew/Hawansi of the Kalahari, whose seasonal rhythms closely parallel Ice Age forager life. Daytime talk was mostly practical resource locations, task coordination, complaints, and conflict. But firelight conversation after dark was 81% stories, accounts of past hunts that had gone wrong or spectacularly right, histories reaching beyond living memory, moral tales that transmitted values without stating them outright. Weissner's conclusion was that this wasn't idle chatter, it was the mechanism by which a group remembered who it was, what it knew, and what it had learned. Winter's long dark hours, with all their enforced closeness, weren't an interruption of forager social life. They may have been its most important part. And then something changed everything. Food storage. Winter's real problem isn't the cold, it's the calorie math. The body needs more energy to stay warm while the environment provides less. And in the far north, you can't simply range wider to find food the way warm climate foragers do. The distances are too great and the weather too dangerous. The solution was to bring summer forward to store abundance and stretch it into the cold months. The oldest confirmed evidence of deliberate food storage comes from Chesem Cave in Israel, where archaeologist Ron Bar-Kai of Tel Aviv University found patterns of processed and saved animal fat dating back roughly 400,000 years, not eaten immediately, but preserved for future use. That's not instinct, that's planning. By 30,000 years ago, storage had become sophisticated. At Dolní Věstonice in the Czech Republic, archaeologist G. Svoboda of the Czech Academy of Sciences documented pits dug below the permafrost line, the layer of soil that stays cold even in summer and packed with processed animal remains. A natural refrigerator, engineered deliberately. Your ancestors didn't understand bacteria or decomposition at a cellular level. They just observed that meat buried in frozen ground in autumn was still edible in deep winter, and meat left in open air wasn't. The mechanism didn't matter. The pattern was enough, and it was enough to build an entire survival strategy around. The Nenets of Siberia still use this exact principle today, burying slaughtered reindeer in permafrost after the autumn kill and retrieving sections through the winter, as needed a freezer that costs no energy to run, because the ground itself does the work. Your ancestors did the same thing with mammoths, with horses, with bison. The kill sites of the late Pleistocene weren't just hunting grounds. They were pantries, chosen partly for the prey and partly for ground cold enough to preserve what the hunt produced. Storage creates a new problem, though. It has to be defended. A winter cache was worth dying for, both to the people who built it and to every wolf, bear, and rival group within scent range. The caloric density of a well-stocked cache was often the difference between a group surviving February and a group starving in it. Anthropologist David Ertl of the University of St. Andrews concluded that the demands of winter storage were likely a significant driver of the strict egalitarian norms found across nearly all known hunter-gatherer societies, because if one person controlled the cache, everyone else died. So caches were shared. Sharing became a norm. Violating that norm became one of the most serious offenses a group could register. That instinct, the deep discomfort at watching someone hoard while others go without, didn't come from moral philosophy. It came from winters that punished hoarding and rewarded sharing with survival, and it's still sitting inside you right now. Here's what should stop you completely. The strategies that kept your ancestors alive didn't just solve a biological problem. They built the architecture of human social life. Long dark hours around a fire produced storytelling, which produced cultural memory, which let knowledge move across generations without writing. Coordinated defense of a shared cache produced trust networks and reciprocity. Winter, with all its danger, wasn't just a season your ancestors survived, it was a forge. It took a social primate and produced something that could plan, cooperate, remember, and teach, all under pressure that ran for 300,000 years without pause. You adjusted the thermostat this morning without looking at it. You're wearing a t-shirt in January. You have food in the refrigerator that will last another week, and the cold is out there, behind glass and insulation and a gas line under the street, managed so completely you haven't thought about it once today. But your body hasn't forgotten. The brown fat around your neck is still waiting to be activated. The vasoconstriction reflex is still ready to fire the instant it's needed. The instinct to gather close to other people when it's cold, to share what you have, to tell stories in the dark that's not culture. That's biology, shaped by hundreds of thousands of winters you will never have to face. Your ancestors sat inside a house built from 95 mammoths on a Ukrainian steppe at -18 degrees and told each other stories until the fire burned low. And they survived that night, and the one after it, and the winter after that. For 300,000 years of winters, they made it through. The warmth you're sitting in right now is their inheritance. You just forgot where it came from.